We just launched our grant management platform and got our first paying customer. Hooray! So when I heard 3 guys from Missouri built a $5 billion company without chasing VCs, I had to dig into it and understand how they pulled it off. If you're new here, I'm Dr. Ehoneah Obed, and I'm a fellow founder and learner building my own startup, Granted Tech, from the ground up. Every day, I study successful companies to see what really works so we can apply it in real time. The mistakes, the wins, and all of that. I spent a couple of hours over the weekend digging through old interviews, podcast episodes, and founder blogs, trying to understand if the bootstrap path is viable while juggling a day job and building Granted Tech. What I discovered about Zapier, the company that we're talking about in today, through the research that I did, changed my entire approach to funding and growth. And I'm happy to share with you all those discoveries and also the lessons that I am personally taking for my own startup. Talking about the Zapier story, I had 6 main discoveries, and we're going to discuss all of those 6 discoveries and also some of the lessons that I'm teasing out that I am going to apply, and you who is watching this can equally take and learn from their story. The first discovery was the fact that they actually built their prototype over a single startup weekend, so some sort of hackathon in Colombia in 2011. Then the founders, these 3 guys, Ward Foster, Brian Hemmick, and Mike Noob, they still had their day jobs. So they had full-time jobs and they were doing this as some sort of side project. So even the founders themselves called it side projects, and they were doing it mostly on weekends. The second discovery was the fact that they applied to YC. And for those of you who don't know YC, that's Y Combinator, one of the prominent startup accelerators or incubators, if I should call it, across the world, based in the US. And they applied in 2011, got rejected the first time they applied. They didn't give up with that. They also went back to regrouped and built more, got accepted the following year after reapplying. Then also, another key insight was the fact that after doing YC, or I think after they had completed their YC badge, one of the founders or the co-founders, Mike, had to move back to Missouri for personal reasons. And for that reason, the company stayed remote. So this is not when remote work had become a thing. This is way before we all jumped onto remote. So really interesting to know that they started working remotely right from the early days. And it resonates with me because currently building Granted, we're working remotely, and I don't think we're going to come into in-person, maybe in the future, but for now, we are working remotely. So it makes sense, or I can connect best with teams that are currently working remotely, or even for Zapier that had worked remotely since almost day one. The third discovery was the fact that in order to grow, one of the key things that they did was to create thousands of landing pages. I can't imagine that, right? But reading about how they did this, so they created landing pages that connected various applications. So essentially, they were building a tool, or if you don't know what Zapier is, it's an integration platform, a platform that allows you to integrate various apps. So for instance, if they pick 2 tools like Slack and Gmail, they would write a program, they would write the blog post about how you can do that integration using their tool. So anybody at all that was searching for how to connect their Gmail to Slack or Slack to Gmail or any form of other combination, so they were essentially just writing the various combinations that people will be searching for. This is essentially known as programmatic SEO, but this was way before that terminology was even known. Like, that terminology was given a name. So it's really great to understand how they started and how they had their growth. And now that I think about it, I also have to start thinking about how can we incorporate some of these organic SEO schemes into building our own platform and growing our platform. I have given some thought to SEO, but I think this was eye-opening, trying to understand the sort of integrations, what keywords that people will be searching for in order to get Zapier. So for instance, you start up, you are new, nobody knows you. It doesn't make sense for you to even be ranking for your name like Zapier because nobody knows you. But if people are already using Slack, Gmail, Trello, MailChimp, things like that, right? So it makes sense for them to write blog posts that talks about how to integrate this, because the people who are using Slack are probably also still looking for ways to integrate their Slack with their Gmail, and they don't know Zapier. But if they go to Google, what they're going to be searching for is how to connect Slack to Gmail. And then Zapier comes up, they become the choice for users. So yeah, really, really great to see that they did this even before programmatic SEO was a thing. Then the fourth discovery was the fact that they didn't just build integrations, they actually convinced other companies to build them as well. So one of the things that they went ahead to do was, apart from building the integrations for people, they actually went to companies as well and say, hey, we've seen that people are complaining about wanting to or struggling to integrate into your platform. There's a way for us to do it, and therefore let's set up these integrations for you. And I think that's really, really cool to know. And they mentioned that they went into various forums and saw people were complaining about some of these integrations, the challenges they were having with these integrations. And they would usually offer to help these people set up their integrations and use Zapier, their product, to do those integrations. And that's how they earn their first set of users. But then they took it a step further by going into these various organizations or companies and talking to them to set up integrations for them. So I believe that that's really genius, and getting to know, one, the frustrations that your target users are facing and finding out where they are complaining. I think it's a similar strategy that we learned yesterday when I reviewed ClickUp, where they also went into forums, but they targeted competitors' customers. These people targeted, the Zapier team targeted people who are complaining about integration. So they're looking for integrations. And this is making me think, what exactly should I be looking out for if I'm looking for customers for granted, people who are looking for grants? Maybe I should start looking into various platforms, forums, for instance, and see where people are complaining about grants and what the big problems are, so that it will help inform how we build our product and what sort of partnerships we bring on board. So that is really insightful. They ended up creating some sort of partner flywheel where the more apps they had, the more users they got, and the more users they got, the more apps that they integrated with. So really, really cool to see that. Discovery number 5 is that they said every employee had to work some support shift. And this wasn't some sort of punishment, but rather some way for them all to understand what is happening to your customers and also be able to support your customers in terms of growth. Then one key highlight that I picked was the fact that they don't measure their success by the number of support tickets closed. And I think that's where most of us do when we are talking about customer satisfaction. Most companies, it will usually look at for how many customers complained and what percentage did we complete, right? So if we have a 98% or 99% completion, then it is a success for us. And I think that's how most of us think about success. But this ideology of actually measuring if the customer achieved their goal as a measure of success is really interesting to know, that they didn't focus about on how many tickets you've closed, but rather on how many of these customers that we have served in terms of the customer support tickets that we raised had their problem solved in 30 days after raising the problem. And that's how they were measuring their success. And eventually this helped them serve the 100K plus customers that they've been able to do by 2020. The last discovery that I pointed out is the fact that they only raised $1.3 million seed funding and stayed profitable. Then along the line so it was largely bootstrap, and they eventually raised seed funding, right? $1.3 million. But in 2021, so some other investors wanted to get into it. I mean, the company was profitable and people wanted to invest more into it. But the interesting thing is that instead of allowing the investors put their money into it and dilutes the valuation or dilutes the equity that the founders owned in the company, what they actually did was to rather do some sort of secondary investment where you are not investing directly into, you're not buying new shares. You're actually buying shares that belongs to others. So that's sort of interesting. This is the first time I'm actually hearing about this and seeing how they did it. So I have to think about it. I don't know if many companies out there do this, but it's really interesting to find out that you can do that as well. I don't know, like I actually never thought about it, never gave it a thought, but now I realize, okay, so if you have, say, investors who have invested money in your company already, instead of diluting it and adding on more shares, you could rather let the third person or the next person who wants to invest into it to buy from some of your investors. So one, you are liquidating some of the shares and the investors are making money while still the company is still running and they still own shares in the company, which is really good. And they also mentioned the fact that they still do not have any form of traditional sales team. So mostly, I believe that their strategy in terms of their growth strategy, where they have dominated the search engine. So organic growth is, I believe, is what is helping them a lot. And eventually, I don't know if there is any other strategies. I may have to look into it if there are any other strategies that they are putting in place to help them grow. Also, in terms of revenue, as of last year, they were having about $310 million in revenue, which is really huge. 310 million is huge. And as against in 2021, it had 140 million. So that's even more than times two in a space of 3 years, which is really good, especially when you're talking about such huge numbers. And mind you, this is a platform that allows you to integrate other platforms. Some of the lessons that I personally am picking out, and I'm hoping that you as well would pick up from this, is one, in terms of building our platform, we need to come up with some sort of SEO strategy, some strategy that will help us also dominate search. So given the strategy that Zapier used in terms of trying to do some sort of programmatic SEO, I believe by now they have set in place programmatic SEO completely. And we also have to think about it, like what are people searching for when they are looking for grants, or specifically what are the pain points that our potential customers are searching for, and how do we target that, and what strategy will help us. So today, or in the course of this week, this is one of the key things that I'm going to be deliberating on. I've actually been giving it a thought on, setting up an SEO strategy. And recently, I think just last week, we added a blog functionality into our product so that we'll be able to write articles and begin to gain some sort of organic traction to our platform. I've seen that on our Google Search Console, we're beginning to pick up at least a few clicks from the Google search. So that is promising, and we need to come up with a solid SEO strategy. And I'm glad that I found the inspiration from Zapier. Also, start looking into forums where people are complaining about grants, and just as I said, we have to use the similar strategy yesterday from ClickUp story and today from Zapier story. We need to find where our customers are hanging out or where our potential customers are hanging out and go there and look for them. Try and understand what they are complaining about and provide them better solutions. So this is really also insightful. Finally, we need to explore partnerships and also identify the actual metrics that we should focus on. Like trying to understand what metrics matters the most. So for Zapier, in terms of their customer support, they were not measuring the number of tickets closed, but rather how many of these customers got their problem solved. So when I think about it, I'm thinking about what metrics are we going to measure to really tell that we are successful at what we are doing. And I think over time, a lot of people tend to track what we refer to as vanity metrics, and we have to be very cautious not to track vanity metrics. And now, maybe in the course of the week too, that's one of the things that I need to start thinking about. What really matters, like what are the metrics that matters to the success of our platform, and if possible, I could set up some sort of automations for reporting this, so that over time we've built an admin portal. So maybe on the admin portal, I'll begin to showcase these metrics. Then every single day when we log in, we'll be able to see how we are performing. So there's a host of things that I've picked from this story, and I hope you have also picked quite a number of these lessons, or at least you've gotten one lesson from the Zapier story and are going to implement it. Look, I don't know if we'll become the next Zapier, but your story proves you can build something massive without playing the normal or the typical Silicon Valley game. You just need to talk to customers obsessively and solve real problems. That's what we see throughout their story. Anyway, tomorrow I'll be diving into another company's journey while probably fixing some more bugs in our platform. If you are building something too, let me know what you're struggling with in the comments. Maybe we can learn one or two from each other's mistakes. And also note that today is actually day 8 of my startup research challenge, and I am doing this every single day. If you are yet to subscribe to the channel, go ahead and subscribe now for more videos like this. Also give the video a thumbs up and share it with anyone who would find value from this analysis. Thank you, and see you in tomorrow's video. Bye bye.